Well, good morning, America. This is Stuart Ryan with yet another podcast on what I consider to be the most important case in front of the Supreme Court, certainly in the moment. And I've entitled this Trump and the Insurrection Act. And I'd like you to remember that I was the first to alert and to explain to you the implication of an amicus brief by Professor Marty Lederman of Georgetown that has thrown a serious monkey wrench into the Trump versus Illinois dispute over the use of federal forces in a civilian law enforcement capacity, which is being heard by the Supreme Court. So where were all the other pundits? Well, that's a good question. Certainly the mainstream media did not cover this. Subsequently, Adam Klasfeld did do a podcast that centered on the Lederman brief, and I'm grateful that he did, that I had previously publicized, and he agreed with my assessment of the situation. Today, Sunday, Michael Popak had a podcast with an Albany law professor whose name I don't have to hand that triggered yet another discussion about the Lederman devious, wonderfully devious, and convincing brief, which questions the very meaning of the phrase regular forces that he argues, and with and from historical evidence, both legal and legislative, indicates that the term means Army, Marine, Navy, the military, and not what he would have described, or others have, irregular forces, or local and state law enforcement, even including other federal agencies. Now, if the court agrees with Lederman, and it's already been greatly troubled by Lederman, enough to ask for additional briefs from the litigants, giving Trump a second shot at this, then you can toss the present invocation into the garbage can. For even this corrupt and fascist majority court cannot completely evade and eviscerate the laws of our land. So, this is the way it breaks down. The requirements of 10 U.S.C. section 12406 will not have been met if we accept that regular forces means the military, and we will not have to examine the factual findings of the lower courts, which basically said Trump claims had been untethered to the facts on the ground, and which, by legal doctrine, must be accorded deference unless clearly erroneous. They can make a narrow ruling finding that regular forces means military, and as there was no military on the sites, in the cities, on the streets, at the time Trump actually invoked the act, they could not have been prevented from executing any laws. So, if Trump is defeated, what happens? Well, good question. As I have many times opined on numerous previous podcasts about the violent next step, now publicly floated by Trump, and without a doubt, Trump will now next attempt to invoke the Insurrection Act, should he not prevail in the present Supreme Court emergency application. So, his use of 10 U.S.C. 12406 is out the window, and he's no longer permitted to deploy National Guard troops into our American cities. Unfortunately, as I have said on many podcasts, the Insurrection Act, which is next in line, is virtually the only exception to the Posse Comitatus Act that actually prevents military deployment into civilian affairs and law enforcement, and unfortunately is much broader and even vaguer than 12406. So, we all know that this Nazi majority Nuremberg set of justices will do anything to release Trump's worst tyrannical energies if given half an excuse. And we have to watch out for the term deference used by them in any of their potential miserable rulings. But on the positive side, Truman got defeated when he invoked the Insurrection Act in Youngstown Steel case 1952, when he tried to nationalize steel mills during the Korean War, where he at least had a serious pretext for invoking the act, but was rebuffed. Trump will, as a matter of course, attempt to manufacture such a pretext, and it is not very hard to predict what means he's going to use, as that is already an open book. He'll try to incite further violence of any kind in the cities, in the streets, by his use of extrajudicial personal ICE agent armies and border patrol. Another card to play, and we can envision, is a fake and unprovoked attack on Venezuela.
There's a crisis in the White House.
What's the crisis?
And the president's top advisors have been called together.
Oh, jeez.
The sexual misconduct occurred inside the Oval Office. With the election only days away, how much will this scandal affect the outcome?
The president spent the weekend pressing the flash. He wasn't campaigning, he was dating, actually.
Now, Washington's top spin doctor
We can distract the press for 11 days till the election. I think we got a chance.
has an idea,
We can't afford a war.
We're gonna have the appearance of a war.
but he can't pull it off without Hollywood's top producer.
Which I might add, he's already set up with naval and other forces now present in the Caribbean and perhaps on the Pacific side as well, blowing up fishing boats with missiles in absolute violation of international and national law. That will be his pretext. And if he is successful before the Supreme Court, which I suggest he might be, and he's not been able to properly rig elections, he'll cancel them under the Insurrection Act. And he'll threaten martial law, which theoretically a president cannot, invoke. However, I don't know who does, because there is such a thing as martial law, and it's all a possibility. The tyranny will worsen, and the Sun King will sit in his palace, which is no longer called the White House, it's called Versailles, in his golden ballroom with his cronies, while the people are further enslaved. That is going to be the outcome here if something fantastic does not happen. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'm sorry to be the bearer of such bad tidings, but at least I deliver the truth. Subscribe. Thank you.